In the silent void of space, a single call for help echoed through the stars. What followed was not mercy, not diplomacy, but the most calculated response in all of galactic history. It began with one voice and ended with a legacy no species would forget. This is the story of the day humanity answered the call. Captain Alara Voss stared out at the stars. Her ship, Stellar Whisper, drifted slowly along the edge of an unexplored system. It was quiet, too quiet for a captain used to buzzing coms, loud engines, and the chatter of her crew. But now, only soft beeps from the control panels filled. The air she missed home. No, not just Earth. She missed him. Commander Yalan Reeve, her old friend and co-pilot from years ago. They had shared every mission, every late-night repair job, and even shared dreams of building a new station together. One day, but then Earth Command had reassigned him to a deep space colony far across the stars. Ilara had smiled when he left, waved, saluted. But inside, she'd felt like a part of her was drifting too. Now she stood alone, one hand gently resting on the console. She had no idea how to reach him. Their messages had slowed. The distance between stars seemed to stretch their bond thinner each month. Was he even thinking of her? Suddenly a loud beep pulled her back. Captain called Officer Wren from the CUM station. We're picking up something strange. Lara turned. Another system ping? Wren shook his head. No, this is different. It's a signal. Not from us. Alien. Weak. But it's definitely a distress call. Ilara walked quickly to the screen. Static filled the sound, but beneath it, there was something else. Something raw. High-pitched voice, full of fear. Cries. Then silence. Boost. Ilara said softly. Wren adjusted the controls. The sound cleared slightly. It wasn't in any known language. But the emotion, pain, loss, panic, it didn't need translation. Ilara's chest tightened. How long has this been repeating? Only a few minutes? Caught the edge of it. She stared at the sound wave. It was like someone screaming into the dark, hoping someone would answer. For a moment, she thought of Yalan again. Of how she never replied to his last message. It had just said, "Are you okay?" It's been a while. She hadn't answered. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know how to say, "I'm not." Captain, said Wren. Should we report it to Earth Command? Ilara nodded slowly. Yes. Send a secure report. And keep recording the signal. She turned back toward the window. The stars still looked peaceful. But now, she couldn't unhear the pain in that message. Later, alone in her quarters, Ilara sat with her datapad. The recorded message played on. Repeat. She couldn't understand the words, but she could feel the heartbreak. She thought about all the times humans had cried for help and no one came. Times when the world was cold, or war-torn, or quiet like space and people gave up hope, because they believed no one cared. Was that what the sender of this signal felt? Forgotten? Ilara closed her eyes. We can't let this be another ignored voice, she whispered. Not like mine, not like Jalen's. She pulled up an old file, his last message. It's the one she never answered. She tapped the screen and recorded a reply. Hey, I'm still out here. I got lost in work, but I miss you. I heard something today. A message from someone who sounds just as lost. I don't know what it means yet. I think it reminded me of you, of us. I'll talk soon, I promise. Shh. Sent it. It wasn't perfect, but it was human, honest. That was something. The next day, Earth Command responded. They confirmed receipt of the alien distress call. No one had ever heard of this signal before. It didn't match any known species or technology, but the tone was clear. They needed help. Ilara's mission changed instantly. She was ordered to hold her position, record everything, and wait for an investigation team. The Aegis Dawn, Earth's peace envoy ship, was being sent. Until they arrive, said Command, keep monitoring and stay alert. Ilara ended the call and walked back to the comms room. Signal was still going, weak but steady. She whispered to it like a secret, don't give up. Someone's listening now. That night, the crew gathered in the dining bay. They talked in hushed tones about the signal. Some were scared, others were excited. But Alara sat quietly, thinking about what it meant to feel far away from someone you care about, and what it meant to be heard again. Humanity had changed. Over centuries, they no longer conquered planets. They no longer fought for land or power, fought for hope, now for life. That's what made them strong. That's what made them human. And maybe they could be the voice that answered another lost soul in the dark. Asterisk, the morning light on Earth was soft over the great white buildings of the United Planetary Council. Inside the large council hall, leaders from every part of Earth and its colonies had gathered. The air buzzed with quiet tension. The alien distress call, found by Captain Alara Voss and her crew, was now the center of every conversation. Councilwoman Myra Juno stood at the center of the wide circular room. She had listened to the signal dozens of times, but the feeling never changed. It broke her heart. She remembered when her daughter had moved away to Mars years ago. At first they talked every day, then less often, then barely at all. She only heard from her once every few months. She didn't even know if her daughter remembered how much Mira missed her as she stood before the council. That same feeling of distance returned only now. It came through a signal from deep space. She spoke clearly. We do not know who sent this call. We do not know where they are from or what species they belong to, but we know pain. We know fear. We hear it in their voice, and I believe we have a duty to answer. Some council members nodded, others frowned. One stood up, Chancellor. Ralan from the Europa colony said, this could be a trap. Fake call to lure us in. We do not know their language, their purpose, or their history. Why should we risk our ships for strangers? Ira looked at him with calm eyes. Because that is what makes us human. When someone cries for help, we listen, we reach out. Even if they're far, even if they're silent. That is who we are. Now she took a breath. And if we ignore this, we risk becoming like those who once ignored us. The room went quiet. Some thought about their own pasts, about times they had cried for help and no one came. About people they had once loved, but now felt too far away to reach. Back in orbit, on the Terran relay station, Alara Voss sat alone in her quarters again. The council hadn't yet made a decision, and waiting was the hardest part. The signal still played softly in the background. She opened her message logs again. There was no reply from Ja. She sighed. Maybe she had waited too long. Maybe their connection had faded with time and space. But then she noticed something, a voice message waiting in her inbox. Her hands shook a little as she tapped it. Alara? I got your message. I didn't know if I should reply. I've been thinking about you for months. Every time I look at the stars, I wonder where you are, and if you still think of me. I do. Every day I miss you, and I hope you're okay. Alara closed her eyes. It felt like air filled her lungs for the first time in weeks. Even across light years, connection could still live. The next day, United Council finally voted the results. 27 in favor. 5 against. Earth would respond, but not with war, with aid. A peace envoy ship would be sent the Aegis Dawn. It would carry translators, food, healing tools, and supplies for survival. It would also carry a message. You are not alone. Alara's ship, Stellar Whisper, was asked to stay near the signal's source and assist the envoy when it arrived. She felt something warm in her chest. This was the right choice. On the Aegis Dawn, Commander Lin Kai prepared his crew. He was a careful man, quiet but strong. He had studied Earth's long past, its wars, its mistakes, and its growth. We don't know what we'll find, he told them. But we go not to fight. We go to understand. And we go because someone out there needs us. He paused and looked. Around the room, I know some of you are scared. I am too. But remember, humanity became strong not because we conquered, but because we changed. That's our strength now. That's what makes us different. Back on Earth, Mira stood on a balcony, looking at the stars. She thought again of her daughter on Mars. She hadn't messaged her in a while either. She pulled out her pad and recorded something simple. I heard a message today. It wasn't in words I could understand, but I felt it in my heart. It reminded me of you. I miss you. I hope you're well. Let's talk soon. She sent it before she could overthink sometimes. Reaching out didn't need the perfect words. Sometimes. It just needed hope. As the Aegis Dawn left Earth's orbit, guided by the stars and the voice from the void, humanity leaned forward as one. The signal had come from far away, from someone afraid, someone alone, and now someone was coming to answer. This was not an act of power. This was an act of heart. Because in the end, even across space, no voice should go unheard and no bond should be forgotten. Captain Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the Stellar Whisper, her eyes fixed on the main screen. The image in front of her was hard to believe. The planet below was ruins scarred by fire, broken buildings, and long lines of blackened earth. Once, this world had life. Now, it was quiet. The Aegis Dawn had arrived 2 days ago. Its crew was working with Alara's team to land quietly and find survivors. There were no enemy ships, no movement from space. But on the ground, there was sadness everywhere. Alara felt something deep in her heart, something that reminded her of how distant she had become from Yolan. She hadn't heard from him again since his message reply. She kept checking her screen, hoping for one more signal, one more word, but it remained blank. Still, she kept hope. That was something humans never let go of. The landing team touched down near the edge of a ruined city. The buildings had strange curves and tall towers clearly alien in design, but they were now half buried in dust and fallen stone. Commander Lin Kai, leading the team from Aegis Dawn, moved ahead carefully. His translator device scanned the air, listening for language signals. Lara followed close behind, her eyes moving across the wreckage. They passed what looked like a school's small handprints marked the outer wall. A broken toy lay in the dirt. No sound, no people, until movement. A team member called softly. Everyone froze. From the shadows of a collapsed building, a figure stepped forward slowly. Thin arms, pale skin, large dark eyes filled with fear. It was a child, alone, shaking, holding something in its hands. Alara crouched gently. She didn't speak. She only extended her hand. The child looked at her for a long time, then slowly held up the object in its hands, a small communicator cracked and covered in dust. The device repeated the same broken distress signal they had heard in space. This was the source. This little one had been calling for help. The team found more survivors underground, barely alive, hiding in old tunnels and storage rooms. Doctors from Aegis Dawn gave them water, food, and quiet comfort. The translator finally caught pieces of their language. Their name was the Solmari. They had once lived peacefully across 3 planets. Then, a group called the Kryn came. The Kryn destroyed their cities, broke their satellites, and left them. With nothing? But why? Someone asked. The Solmari elders shook their head. Because we were easy to break. Lara's fists clenched, but not with anger, just sadness. These people hadn't fought. They had just tried to survive. She helped lift one of the injured onto a stretcher. As she worked, she kept thinking about her message to Yolan. She had spoken her feelings. He'd answered once, but now it was quiet again. Had he changed his mind? Had distance taken him too far away? She didn't know, but she knew this someone had to be the one who didn't give up. Later, aboard the ship, Alara sat in the medical bay. The alien child who had held the communicator was asleep beside her, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Soft beeping of life support filled the room. Commander Kai walked in. We've sent full scans and recordings to Earth. They've seen everything now. Good, Alara said. They need to see what was done here. Kai sat beside her. The Council is already preparing more ships, more help. That's good too. A pause. Alara, Kai said gently, why did this signal matter so much to you? Before we even got here. She looked down at the sleeping child. Because I know what it feels like. To call out and not be sure anyone's listening. She turned to him. Sometimes you care about someone deeply, but they go far away. They stop writing. You start to think they forgot. But you still hold on to hope. And then one day, You'll hear from them again. Kai nodded slowly. Sometimes they don't write back. Alara smiled sadly. And it hurts, but that doesn't mean you stop caring. She looked out the window. We don't know who the Kryn are or where they are now, but we do know this someone cried for help. We came. That has to mean something. As the days passed, more Solmari were found. The Aegis Dawn set up shelters and began building a new relay station to help them speak with Earth. Word spread quickly across human colonies. Earth had responded to an unknown voice and saved lives. People on Earth, Mars, Europa, and the Moon sent thousands of messages. Artists painted the image of the alien child holding the communicator. Poets wrote verses about hope from the stars. Students read about Captain Alara and Commander Kai in class, and quietly. Somewhere deep in another system, Yalan Reeve opened a message. From Alara we made contact. The signal came from a child, alone but strong. We stayed. We helped. Still think of you. I still hope. I'll keep writing even if I don't hear back, because that's what we do. We don't forget. He smiled faintly, then began typing. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, where sadness had once filled the sky, human lights now shone bright. They had not come with weapons. They had come with hands open, because sometimes the greatest retaliation in history isn't one of war, it's one of compassion. Asterisk back on Earth. The skies over Unity Hall were gray and heavy with rain. People from all across the planet stood outside the great glass building, silent and watching the large screens. Above, the footage being shown came from the Stellar Whisper and Aegis Dawn, the ruined planet. The scared child, the quiet alien voices crying for help. The images reached deep into the hearts of every human watching. In the crowd stood a woman named Lyra Rell. She worked as a communications officer in a small outpost on Earth's southern continent. She had once been close with her older brother Damon. He was a space engineer now, stationed on Neptune's outer ring. He had left 2 years ago. At first they spoke often, but lately, nothing. She looked up at the screen and thought of him. Had he seen these images too? Was he also feeling what she felt, that pull in her chest to do something, to speak, to connect again? Lyra felt tears in her eyes as she watched the Solmari child, small, frightened, but alive. The child was holding a translator device now, trying to say thank you in human words. Something about that moment made her reach for her wrist pad. She opened her message app, looked at Damon's name, and hovered her finger over the send button. But she didn't know what to say. What if he didn't want to hear from her anymore? She lowered her hand. Still, the feeling remained. Inside Unity Hall, the United Planetary Council had gathered again. The emergency vote had been called. After Earth received the full report from the Solmari planet, every member sat at the long crescent table. The lights were dimmed. The images of the destroyed cities still hovered in holograms between them. Councilwoman Mira Juno stood to speak. What we have seen is not just an attack on a peaceful species, she said, voice strong and clear. It is a reminder that the galaxy is still full of shadows, and we must decide what kind of light we want to be. She looked around. There are those who believe we should stay silent, that we have no duty to others beyond our borders. That is fear. But humans are not made of fear. We are made of memory and choice and hope. Mira took a deep breath. I propose a new law, one we will write into our history. The Oath of Earth. It will say that when any voice in this galaxy cries for help, human or not, we will answer. Not with war, but with strength, compassion, and unity. We will not be watchers. We will be guardians. The room was quiet. Then one by one, hands began to rise. The vote was passed unanimously. Later that night, as rain still fell outside, people around the world lit lanterns and candles in windows. It was a tradition that had returned in recent years, a way of showing you were thinking of someone far away. In her small apartment, Lyra Rell lit a candle by her window. She stared at it quietly, then picked up her wrist pad again. This time, she didn't hesitate. Hey Damon, I saw the news today, about the signal. about the people out there who needed us. It made me think of you. I know we haven't spoken much lately, and maybe I don't even know how to fix that, but I miss you. Hope you're okay. And I hope you know I'm always here, even if far away." She sent it. Then she leaned her head against the glass and closed her eyes. Far away. On a moon station orbiting Neptune, Damon Rell sat alone in his bunk. Just finished. He had watched the child's face, the ruins, the council vote. He had also been thinking of Lyra all day. When the message arrived, he read it slowly, then smiled. He typed a reply. "I saw it too. I thought of you. I'm okay. And I miss you too. I didn't know how to say it, but I'm really glad you did." Sometimes the galaxy felt wide. Too wide. But sometimes a message from far away could close the distance in a single breath. In orbit around the broken world. Captain Alara Voss stood on the viewing deck of the Aegis Dawn. She watched as the first aid station was finished. Human and Solmari. Engineers worked side by side. New gardens were being planted. Solar towers were being raised. The child who sent the distress signal was now walking again, holding a small Earth-made tablet. Drawing pictures, Commander Lin Kai joined her. "You've seen the news?" he asked. "Yes," Alara nodded. "The Oath of Earth. It's more than just words, I know," she said. "It's a promise. And this time, we're going to keep it." And, She looked up at the stars. Still no reply from Yalin. But she didn't feel alone. Any more hope didn't need immediate answers. Hope only needed one thing, that someone would choose to care. And now, humanity had made that choice. The stars outside the Solmari world sparkled with quiet beauty, but Captain Alara Voss could feel a change in the air. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something deeper, kind of stillness before a coming storm. The news of Earth's actions had spread fast, faster than Alara expected. Across the human colonies, people had lit candles, sent messages, held moments of silence for a species they had never met. For strangers, but not everyone in the galaxy liked what Earth had done. The Kryn Syndicate had heard, and they were not silent. Far across the stars, in a red-tinted sector of space, the Kryn gathered. They were not like humans, cold, calculating, cruel. The Kryn ruled by fear. They had no art, no compassion, only control. For them, the Solmari had been a warning to other weak species. Obey or disappear. Now, Kryn leaders watched recordings of Earth's ships helping the Solmari rebuild. One of them slammed a clawed fist on the table. They should not have come. They should not have answered that call. Another hissed. "They are soft, foolish, but dangerous. That makes them a problem." "Then we remind them," said their prime commander. "We show them what happens to those who get in our way." On the Aegis Dawn, Alara stood before a large screen. It showed images of unknown ships approaching the edge of Solmari space. Their shape was sharp, like blades. Their colors were black and silver. No official greeting was sent, no words, just their silent presence. Commander Kai stepped beside her. "The Kryn," he said. Alara nodded. "They're watching." She felt her stomach tighten. This wasn't fear for herself. It was fear that the peace they were building might be broken. The small Solmari children, the gardens they had planted, the quiet safety they had created, could all vanish with one blast. Kai placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We won't let that happen." She smiled faintly. "I know. We've come too far to run now." Elsewhere, a young man named Aaron worked in a cum station near Saturn. He was just a technician, not a soldier. But he had been following the story of the Solmari for weeks. Every night, he read updates from the Aegis Dawn, watched the human crews giving aid, listened to the now famous recording of the alien distress call. It reminded him of his best friend, Nilo, who had moved to a research colony 2 years ago. They used to talk every day, share silly ideas, laugh until late, but then life changed. They drifted apart. Messages stopped. Aaron still thought about him, and now, the tension rising in space, Aaron felt something strange, like, if he didn't reach out now, It might be too late. He opened his message app. He stared at Nilo's name for a long time. What could he say? Hey, I miss you. Are you okay? Do you still think of me too? His fingers hovered. Then, before he could stop himself, he typed, The Salmari sent a signal and someone listened. I didn't think we still had that kind of heart left in us. But we do, and it made me think of you. Hope you're okay. Just wanted to say, I miss you. He pressed send and waited. Lair sat in her quarters that evening, going over reports. The Solmari children had started drawing again. It even made pictures of human ships and smiling people. It warmed her heart. Then her message chime blinked. Reply from JLN. Her breath caught in her throat. She tapped the screen. I've been watching. I see what you're doing. None of the right words. Just know that I'm proud of you. I'm still here. Still thinking of you. Maybe one day we'll meet again under better skies. Tears filled her eyes. But they were gentle ones. Not from pain, but from hope. He hadn't forgotten the next morning. The Kryn ships moved closer. The human defense fleet had arrived by then, small but strong, ready to protect without attacking first. Earth's orders were clear. Stand guard, hold position, and speak with calm strength. One Kryn ship approached and sent a signal. It said only 2 words. Leave now. Commander Kai sent back a message. We don't run from kindness. No fire came. The Kryn didn't expect that. They had waited for fear. But Earth showed none, not because they were reckless, but because they believed in something greater. There's a message. Chime blinked that night. A reply from Nilo. I've missed you too. I didn't know if I should reach out. I thought maybe you forgot. I'm glad you didn't. Let's talk again soon. He smiled and looked up at the stars. It was amazing how one small message could change so much, just like that little distress signal had changed everything. Humans had once fought wars to survive. Now they stood between peace and destruction, not with violence, but with courage. The Kryn might have seen kindness as weakness, but they were wrong. It was humanity's greatest strength, and it would change the galaxy forever. Asterisk. The Kryn ships hovered like shadows on the edge of Solmari's space, silent, watching, waiting. On board the Stellar Whisper, Captain Alara Voss stood in front of her crew. The command room lights were low. The atmosphere was serious, but steady. Her voice was calm as she spoke. We are not here to fight, she said. We are here to protect. The human defense fleet had taken position around the Solmari world. They formed a ring like a great shield blocking the Kryn from coming. Closer, the Kryn had the power to destroy. That was clear. But humans had something more. Reason, courage, and the will to protect others without fear. Back on Earth, Myra Juno watched the fleet positions from a large command table in Unity Hall. The Oath of Earth had been passed only days ago, and now it was already being tested. Mira was not a soldier. She wasn't even young anymore. But she had something else, faith in what humanity had become. She thought of her daughter on Mars. They had only exchanged a few short messages since she reached out last week. The last one said, I saw what we're doing. I'm proud.
DOS.
Talk soon. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Sometimes all hope needed was one reply. Out near Saturn. Aaron looked at the empty screen in front of him. He had messaged Nilo again, sharing updates from the fleet and the Solmari recovery efforts. He didn't expect a fast reply. Then a notification blinked. Still reading your messages? Sorry I'm slow. Been thinking a lot. You were always better at reaching out than me. Aaron smiled quietly. That was enough. The Kryn finally moved. 2 of their smaller ships drifted forward, their weapons powered on, glowing faintly in space. No warning shots, no message. Just a quiet show of force, on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn. Commander Lin Kai gave orders. Shields up. Hold position. No one panicked. The humans did not fire. They didn't shout. They simply held their line. The Kryn paused. To them this was confusing. Why weren't the humans reacting with fear? Why weren't they trying to run? Instead, the human ships opened their hatches and deployed something unexpected: dade pods, floating, Containers gently released into space. Inside were food supplies, medical kits, and messages recorded in over 20 languages, including early versions of Selmari and Kryn. Each message said the same thing: "We are not your enemy, but we will not let you harm the helpless." Captain Alara stood by the viewing window and watched the pods float slowly into the void. "They'll think we're foolish," said one young officer beside her. "Maybe," Alara said, "but they'll also know who we are." She placed her hand against the glass. "In a galaxy full of fire, we chose to be the light." Later, a surprise transmission arrived from one of the Kryn ships. A voice, low and harsh, spoke. "Why do you defend the weak? They cannot repay you. They are already broken." Lara took a breath, then replied, "Because someone must. And because once, long ago, we were weak too. But someone helped us change. Now it's our turn." There was no response, but the Kryn ships stopped moving. They didn't leave, but they didn't attack. The shield held. On the ground below, the Solmari were beginning to laugh again. Their children were learning human words. Gardens had started growing. In the soil, with Earth engineers teaching farming. At night, both species sat around small solar lamps and told stories. Hope was growing. Alara sent another message to Yolan. "They came close today, but we didn't back down. We didn't fire either. We stood still and told them the truth. They're still listening. I hope you are too." She didn't expect a reply right away, but she still sent the message, because even far apart, she didn't want silence to win. That night, across Earth's colonies, people lit more candles in windows, not because of fear, but because of strength. The kind that came from choosing to care, even when it was hard. From standing firm, not with violence, but with heart. It wasn't the kind of retaliation the galaxy expected, but it was the kind that changed everything. The stars above the Salmari world were calm again. The Kryn ships had left. They didn't say why. There were no warnings, no goodbyes, just silence. And then the long lines of black ships faded into the distance. But Alara, the boss, knew why. Humanity hadn't fired a single weapon. They hadn't shouted, hadn't run. They had stood their ground, quietly, steadily, and that had changed everything. Alara walked through the new Solmari school. It's built beside the gardens. Children sat with Earth teachers, learning to draw, read, and speak in both Solmari and human languages. One of the walls had a large painting now. It showed a human ship and a child holding a broken communicator, just like the one that first sent the signal weeks ago. At the bottom of the painting, in both languages, were the words, "We called." They answered. Alara touched the wall lightly. This was why they came, not to fight, not to control, but to protect, to heal, to stay. In her quarters aboard the Stellar Whisper, Alara looked at her screen. No new messages from Yolan. She stared at his last one again. "Maybe one day we'll meet again under better skies," she smiled. Maybe they would. She didn't feel the same heavy sadness anymore. There was still distance, but it didn't feel cold or empty. It just felt patient. She had sent words. He had sent his. Maybe that was enough. For now. What mattered was that they had not forgotten each other. That was the human way. Back on Earth, Lyra Rel stood in the great memorial park near Unity Hall. Around her were people of all ages, lighting sky lanterns. Each lantern had a name, a word, or a hope written on it. Lyra had written only 2 words, "Still here." She watched her lantern rise into the sky, glowing gently like a tiny star. She hadn't heard back from her brother Damon in a few days. But she wasn't sad. They had talked. They had reconnected. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And she believed they would talk again, because humans didn't give up on people they cared about. On Mars, Damon sat at his station, watching the sky through a small round window. He had Lyra's message saved on his wrist pad. He hadn't replied yet, but he read it often. He had always believed he needed to be strong, that silence was easier than messy feelings. But watching Earth's response to the Solmari had taught him something. Strength wasn't silence. Strength was caring anyway. Even when it hurt, he opened his message app, typed, "Still here too?" and sent it in Unity Hall. Councilwoman Myra Juno stood at a podium as a new group of young students took the oath of Earth for the first time. Each one placed their hand on a glowing stone and spoke the words, "When any voice calls, I will listen. When fear rises, I will stand with hope. When others fall, I will rise beside them. I am human. I remember. I care." Mira smiled. This was no longer just about the Solmari. It was about every life, every future, every connection worth holding on to. In space, the Aegis Dawn left Solmari orbit to help another small colony in need. Captain Alara stayed behind with the Stellar Whisper, leading the continued support mission. She walked the edge of the new Peace Garden, where both humans and Solmari planted trees together. One child, same one who had sent the distress call, ran up to her with a drawing. It was simple. It's people, one human, one Solmar holding hands under a star. Alara bent down. "Is this us?" she asked. The child nodded and smiled. Alara placed a hand on her heart. "This is the best message I've ever received." That night, as the stars turned above the quiet planet, thousands of human and Solmari voices spoke together through new long-range transmitters. They weren't sending distress calls. They were sending stories, poems, lullabies, old Earth songs, Solmari music. Messages of thanks, of love, of hope, and humanity, once known only for surviving, was now remembered for something greater, for choosing to answer. Across the galaxy, the Kryn watched. They didn't understand it yet. They didn't know how to fight something that fused to fear them. But they did learn one thing. Humanity wasn't weak. They were strong in the quietest ways. They were a shield that didn't break, and a flame that didn't burn. Its final message to Yolan Reed. "I don't know when we'll see each other again. Maybe soon, maybe years from now. But I'll be here, still answering, still listening. And I hope wherever you are, you're doing the same." The distress call had once echoed in the dark. Now, 1,000 lights answered it, and across the stars, new legacy had begun. A legacy written in hope, a legacy written by humans, a legacy written in stars.